Secondly, declarations of interest. Members know only too well. If you have any interest to declare, either do it now or at the time you feel it's appropriate. Public question time. Don't believe there's any notice of questions.
Conciliation efforts with his father. In my view is, I don't think it will damage them.
I think Nick's online, but he's
The king wants to
not muted.
Yeah.
Are you able to mute?
We have a ghost. Right, minutes of the meeting of the 9th of June. Can I sign those as a correct record, please?
Hi.
Where are they? I'll do that later.
Can I have the clipboard, please?
Oh,
Table.
thank you. Everyone's fine, so that's okay. What are those things? The next item is to receive the minutes of the meeting of the Plans Subcommittee. Members will note that the 28th of July actually came before the 30th, but it doesn't really matter. Why haven't I got them here? There we are. So first on your list was the 28th of July. Are there any comments on that particular set of planning committees? Decisions? No? Okay. Move on then back to the 30th of June. Are there any comments members wish to make on this list?
Oh, Chair.
Yes.
Just this evening at Plan Sub, we've seen notification that 7 Queensway Parade has been refused their planning application by Central Bedfordshire Council, but they are still operating without permission. So I just wanted it to be known that we're expecting now the enforcement to take place to actually deal with the matter and to stop them from being allowed to operate without planning permission. It's unfair when we've had other businesses in our town not able to trade because they are seeking a different change in planning rules and planning purposes, etc. But these guys are still trading and they are not having permission.
And it was a retrospective application in the first place.
So I wanted to make that publicly aware so that, you know, we can hopefully see some enforcement happening.
Yes, we are, as I say, concerned with retrospective applications in any event, but can we send a note to Central Beds to ask them if they're going to act on this one? Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Separately, you received the minutes of the plan sub on the 18th of August. Are there any comments on that one? No. Okay. Right, the next item on the agenda is the action tracker.
Yes, do you want me to go through each one, Chair?
Well, I think if there's anything particularly you wish to point out, I think, and then members can pick up any matters that they feel relevant.
Okay, so the first one there, the allotment land, that's something that members wanted us to consider when we're going through the management plans arrangements for the recreation grounds. We had our first management plan meeting for Kingsbury Recreation Ground. It was an officer member working group meeting, workshop, should I say, and the allotment land there and the fact that there isn't any particular available space there. So that's a piece of work that's ongoing through all of the management plans that are being developed over the next 3 years. The next one here is updated in the information report that Kathy will give you later on. Sorting and gritting, I have had no further communication at the time that we wrote this report from Central Bedfordshire Council, and I'm not aware that any other town or parish council has had any notification of similar discussion about sorting and gritting arrangements. So I can't make any progress on that at this particular time.
Maybe one of our colleagues on Central Beds as well could perhaps pick that one up.
Maybe consider chasing him up.
I have chased them up, yes.
Okay.
Councillor Henderson, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to make a similar suggestion whether if John was able to let us know the name of the person who holds that role in CBC, that would mean the CBC councillor perhaps could approach them and if we could get a response.
Yeah.
Since you've written a few times.
I can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The pergola CCTV, this was a question about whether the CCTV coverage that was on Priory Gardens actually covered the pergola. But since that time, the CCTV was cut off when the land was sold to the current developer of the property, which is the medical centre. We've been doing some work to negotiate a lease to retain the camera on there, because moving the camera isn't particularly an option. We can't put it on the back of Priory House, and it would be difficult to relocate it somewhere else within our own land without having to seek the various consents, dig some very deep holes, some very deep footings, which is not particularly good on such a sensitive site. We're trying to finalise that lease at the moment, and once that lease is finalised, they should be able to switch the electricity power supply back on, the camera back on, and the CCTV centre at Thornton will be able to monitor from there on in. So that's a work in progress at the moment. The other item there, CCTV, that was about a review, and I think my colleagues, with regard to finance and general purposes, are bringing a question about how members want to scope, if members want to scope that project and the extent of that as to whether it covers just green space or whether it covers our entire estate, including buildings as well. So there will be a brief discussion about that at finance and general purposes in the September meeting. The public question about the self-closing gates at Kingsbury, that's contained within the information report. And the last one, there was a question about the CCTV coverage when the arson occurred at Bennett's recreation ground. And it was just a note to confirm that all the repairs are now complete and the CCTV is operating again and is operational.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions that members would like to raise? Yes, Councillor Tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair. John, I just wondered, the Eastgate's surgery, is that not backing up to Priory Garden? And is it not possible to have the CCTV on that building? Is it?
Eastgate surgery is on Church Street.
Yeah, it wouldn't cover.
It wouldn't cover them.
You think
I'm
about
talking about the back.
you're talking about the old clinic building.
Behind the Physic Garden.
Yes.
That's now being renovated, isn't it, into private?
So that's now being renovated for a different use, and the owner of that property is the person that we're organising the lease so that the camera could stay there. Because it's well located in that location. It serves a purpose there.
I had a question about the phone kiosk, the defibrillator in it. I understand it's already been used. Who's responsible for maintaining that, making sure it's reset and
The council's responsible for that
okay.
because it's a council-owned property asset which the council purchased at the request of the members,
Okay.
been refurbished by the council. The defibrillator has been installed through grant funding, I think, and or securing of other monies from a private
The
industry.
equipment in there is serviceable all the time.
Serviceable, it belongs to the council, yes.
Okay.
And while we're in that area, you'll remember that we're going to put a planter there, that somebody has plonked in communications thing, I guess, coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's coming up in the information report.
So, yeah. Okay, if we move on then to the next agenda item, I think Mary Dodds is going to start this off with the cemetery and the allotments, and then Daniel Mott's going to come in on the next bit, and then we'll end up on the last bit with Catherine Doyle. So, Mary.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Following the Green Flag Judge visit to the cemetery in May for a full inspection, the cemetery has retained its Green Flag status. New signage has now been purchased for the cemetery extension, but officers have also taken the opportunity to change the signage in the older part of the cemetery to display the new version of the town logo, and both signs will be installed in the coming weeks. The Friends of Dunstable Cemetery continue to meet twice a month on the first and third Thursday. They do an excellent job, and we're always looking for new volunteers. In July, the first time for a little while, the town guides organised a cemetery walk, stopping at a number of notable memorials within the cemetery. The walk was exceptionally well received and with a lot of positive feedback.
We just pause there for a moment while we've just done that little bit. Can I say our congratulations on retaining the green flag?
Thank you.
That was raised the other day. A number of the ground staff were there, as well as councillors and others, officers. It was just one of many successes that we'll record during the course of this meeting. Yes, a lot. Any questions on that section? Okay, let's move on to allotments.
So just a very short report on the allotments. There's currently 292 people on the waiting list, a slight increase since the last report, but Appendix 2 provides more specific data. Inspections took place in early July, and across 300 plots, we only had to issue 22 notices to cultivate. 3 tenants gave up at that point, and we only then had, upon re-inspections, only had to issue 1 notice to quit. The other 18 had made satisfactory progress, and the next inspections will take place in October. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to raise any questions about the allotments or Appendix 2? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I should also just declare an interest in that I am an allotment holder in Dunstable. I remembered from previous meetings that I think that as the allotment plots were coming up, I think they were being converted, so they were being made into 2 rather than 1. Is that still the policy? Where
it is not every plot will be made will be split, because we do have an obligation to have different sizes, but where a plot becomes difficult to manage, then yes, we will look to divide that into half. Yeah.
And maybe not for now, but do we have an idea of how many extra plots we've actually managed to be able to produce through that method?
We've been doing it for some time. I don't have the figure to hand, but I can have it for, I can have that figure for you.
I just think it'd be helpful for the public to know that though we've not been able to produce new allotment areas, we are actually releasing some capacity.
No, but I can get that for you, Councillor Henderson.
Yes, Councillor Jones.
We're veering on 300 on our waiting list. It's going up rather than down, isn't it? And I am hugely concerned that if we get to 300, that's a massive number. It just signifies, I don't know, it's only 8 more people. What can we do? We've either got to find some more allotment space from somewhere, or do we close the allotment list and don't let anybody else join it for the time being? what's the point of allowing the list to continually grow and grow and grow? Because it just adds pressure. Do we just say, actually, we're going to pause taking anybody new onto the allotment list for a period of time to allow chance for it to come downwards?
Yes, there's a difference between sort of encouraging people to take on an allotment and well, part of our green project and so on, and the practicality of asking people to wait quite a long time. Mary, any comment on that?
I mean, we do carry out calls sort of at least once a year, and approach people on the waiting list to see if they wish to remain on the waiting list. But it's easy to remain on the waiting list, so people would just say, yes, I'm happy to wait. So we do carry out that exercise. I think in the summer months it tends to go up. I know that we were at 300 previously or in the past, and we have managed to reduce the list.
Do you want to come in on this particular issue?
Yes, it's probably worth remembering, members, that we are pursuing the creation of a new cemetery at Cottage Bottom Field, and that piece of land will arguably provide you with burial space for about 96 years, which is a long time to fill. Now, there is a thing in the allotment world called meanwhile sites. And meanwhile sites are where you can use land, you set it aside for one purpose, but you don't need it immediately, therefore you use it for allotments for a number of years. What you eventually have to do, though, is to give everybody notice when you get to the point where you need it. So you buy it for cemetery land, you make sure that you're allowed to use it for allotment land, you then use it for allotment land for 40 or 50 years, and then you eventually have to deal with that problem further down the line. Who knows what the waiting list will be like then? It's impossible to say, but that would be one potential solution, which is not a million miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you did ask us through the management plans to consider whether or not there was any other space on any other site that could be used as allotment land. And I suspect the only site that might work would be Downside, which is linked to Cottage Bottom Field anyway. So we're probably better off waiting for Cottage Bottom Field, if that helps. It's also worth adding that the allotment waiting list, I think, have probably dipped, has gone up as high as about 310, but as low as about 260, 270. Yeah. I think I'm just remembering the figures off the top of my head. And it does ebb and flow between those two figures. It's certainly not going in a downward trend.
Councillor Brennan.
So I do wonder whether the amount of time is increasing that people are waiting. I know you've said previously, I know I've asked, it's been 2 years. Is that still the standard sort of time that people are waiting?
Yeah.
So can we look into the use of Cottage Bottom Field while we're there? I do, because I feel like when we did get to 310, which we're approaching now, we made the decision that we would close the allotments off to people from outside of Dunstable. And I remember we were writing to people in Houghton Regis saying you can't have an allotment in Dunstable for that particular reason, because it had got so high, in the hope that it would bring it down. Given the fact that it's back up there, I think we should do something. I've never been comfortable with the fact that there's 200 people waiting 2 years to get an allotment, especially if Cottage Bottom Field is just sitting there and we're waiting for the EPA or waiting for the cemetery working group. Can we start that piece of work now, where we look into the use of it for allotments, and actually do something about the waiting list? Like, how much work would that actually entail, ensuring that we have the proper use of Cottage Bottom Field for allotments, staking out space for allotments? It wouldn't take too much for the cemetery working group to decide how much of that field we would use for allotments. in the time being and how long we would use that for. I feel like this is something that by the end of the year, like we could have a considerable dip in the waiting list, or is that just pie in the sky? Am I really just getting too excited about the fact that you could use Cottage Bottom Field for allotments? It's just sitting there, nothing happening to it.
You're entirely right to raise it, Paul.
The short answer is we can't do it immediately. So we don't own the land yet. So we still need to go through the process of actually obtaining the land from CPC while it's informal agreement in place, which is unlikely to happen until next financial year. But also there are some really key pieces of work that needs to be done before we can turn it into allotment. So actually putting a roadway in is necessary for the cemetery and the allotment, and that is not a straightforward, quick piece of work. So the pressure is on us for the cemetery to get cracking on and get those things happening anyway, and the pressure is on us for allotments at the same time. But it might not be realistic to think that we can have allotments in there before we can start the cemetery work at the same time.
Okay.
Is that something that the working group would have to consider and recommend in any event? It's not something that can just be done.
Yeah, you'd need to take a formal decision that that's what you wanted to do, and then of course there's the cost of actually setting the allotment site up, so making sure that you've got water, but some of those costs could be shared with the actual development work for, you know, providing the cemetery. It would be difficult though, as you said, because of the infrastructure issues, to actually run it ahead of the cemetery work. I think it's got to be done in conjunction with, and there's no reason why when we appoint the consultants to support us with this work, we can include that within the brief, that there is some key infrastructure here that supports two uses, not just one.
Come back, Councillor Brown.
If I may, so could we agree that now that that is something that we would like to do, that we know that the cemetery is coming up and that there is a possibility for this for this to happen going forward, that we look at it with a view of a dual use from the start, just so that it doesn't get lost. Just because I've heard you talk about Cottage Bottom Field before and the possibility of using it for allotments. If we're jumping off on the right foot from the start, it's going to make it a lot easier. So if we as a committee could agree that that is something that we'd like to do.
I think maybe the simplest thing is to note that officers have taken an action to ensure that consideration of allotment land is included in all cemetery planning.
Okay, cool.
Councillor tomorrow and then Councillor Outwell.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I recall, some little while back, we had a discussion about the cost, as well as whether people are paying a deposit. Maybe that interaction in terms of the cost and whether there's a process of the deposit, especially for people that don't use it. It's free and you've got an allotment, but you actually don't, use it properly somewhat. Because, I just wonder if there's a way. We did have this discussion. Is there any progress on how we're looking at the cost, a deposit system? Do we remember having a conversation about it?
What the deposit issue was regarding, Councillor?
If I remember correctly, we were having a discussion about the waiting list and how you can reduce the waiting list by creating a system. I think also part of the discussion was that a lot of people had the allotment, but they weren't actually using it. So how do you bridge that gap of having 300 people waiting on the waiting list and people that are not actually using? But if there is, I don't know if you, maybe I'm looking at it from a deterrent point of view now. If you have to pay for it in terms of the deposit system, with that, would actually galvanize the people that actually needs the allotment to actually use it.
So we do carry out allotment inspections at least three times a year. And then that addresses those tenants that are not working the allotments as per the tenancy agreement. So when we say we've issued 22 notice of cultivates in July, that will be on the back of the inspections that we did in July. And then as a result of that, ultimately one notice to quit was issued. So those inspections are carried out 3 times a year. We also do work quite closely with some tenants if they are struggling to manage the plots. But with regards to a deposit, then.
Well, the other thing, if I might, Chair, one of the key issues around allotment provision across the country is that it's affordable. And my concern would be that requiring a deposit to be paid might well force people not to participate or use allotments. And whilst that might help reduce the waiting list, I'm not sure that that's an appropriate way to go forward.
Okay, I think we'll have to leave it at that on that particular issue. Councillor Axwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just to really pick up on what Paul and John just mentioned is that, you know, I'm all for this idea of using it, you know, the purpose for allotments in the meantime. It sounds great, but I do think we've got to show a little bit of consideration towards the actual site as well, because although you said that the road needs to be built, from my recollection and the way the layout of the actual site, there's only going to be one road in. So how would that work with construction traffic going in, as well as members of the public and things like that as well? Is there, we talk about the other allotment that's on adjacent to the back, would there be an access route through to the back end of it from there, or is that something we could consider? Because I just see it from a health and safety thing, and it'd be a disaster to have that being shared, even if the road was built, between construction traffic and members of the public or people, the allotments. I'm not sure how that would work.
I think the short answer is that we have yet to go through design and planning consents and take professional advice. So they're very good questions that we don't yet have the answer to.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to recreation grounds, and Daniel Mott will relish in another green flag, I expect.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So play areas, since the last report to the committee, we've had to undertake some work at Ridgway Recreation Ground, as the play area has had a lot of graffiti. That's now being removed from the equipment, and obviously the graffiti is being classed as vandalism to that equipment, which is very unfortunate. And the inclusive seesaw play that's recently installed at Grove House Gardens has had to be cordoned off. After an inspection, there was found to be some faults with it. After subsequent inspection by one of our team, we needed to close it off, and it's now in the process of being replaced by the installers for no charge to us. Sports areas, the grounds team are coming to the end of their summer season. Through June, July and August, we paused some of the grass cutting due to the hot weather. But through that time, we had a lot of additional work for watering of plant displays. So that time was used very usefully to create plant displays that we've had this year. And we've used that time to reinstate grass pitches and make sure they're up to standard for the new grass football season. So all the pitches have been reinstated, goals put in place, so the football season is now underway. It started on the Saturday, the 6th of September. We are now using our new booking system for the football. Bennett's Memorial Ground has retained a green flag for the 3rd year running, with an increase of overall assessment score. Recognising the progress made in the last 18 months through significant improvements and changes for the use of Splash Cafe and the community hub.
Yes, councillor Jones.
Just a couple of things.
Okay.
Great to see that the football's back.
Yeah.
But weekend one.
Yeah.
On Jean's Way.
Yeah.
Was absolute carnage for cars parked in the car park, up the street, all over the grass verge. The 5 or 6 trees that were planted 2 years ago, I think we're down to just 2 trees left on the grass verge. They've been knocked over, they've been taken out, etc. Now I know they're CBCs, but it's because of the usage on Sundays. The footballers do not care where they park, and it is having a real negative impact. We cannot get out of our drive on a Sunday safely. We cannot see what is coming either side of our house, and others are finding it exactly the same situation. As well, over the summer, I've been walking my dogs, and there's been a significant uptake of cricket in Kingsbury, playing in between the 2 football pitches, using that as their wicket stumps. Now, in olden days, there was a cricket pitch at Kingsbury, exactly where they've been playing. And I just wonder whether, as part of your management plan, whether that has been raised by ward councillors, or whether it's something that we could consider as part of going forward. Because when I say significant, probably every day during the summer holidays, there were kids in there with families playing cricket. And we don't have a cricket pitch anywhere in town.
With regard to the parking, this was a matter that was raised both through the public consultation and at the recent workshop with members. Councillor John Gurney has made me aware of a contact at Central Bedfordshire Council who was looking at the parking issue on Jean's Way, because he'd like to hear about some of the things that we're hoping we might be able to do by way of extending the car park at the Kingsbury Recreation Ground. Did I say Kingsway? I beg your pardon. Kingsbury Recreation Ground. And that it's possible that we might be able to create as many as 10 to 16 additional spaces by extending the car park into the recreation ground there. So I'm hoping that that will be agreed as an action for the management plan when it comes to committee in November, which will begin to help alleviate the problem. I don't know whether we would be able to do anything through the hire arrangements to advise people. I'm assuming that the car park is full.
So the car park, last weekend, the car park was absolutely chock-a-block, and fair play to the footballers, they block themselves in to get as many in there as they can. Obviously, we've got the other added addition at the moment where the house that is doing a hell of a lot of refurbishment have taken the opportunity to put a vehicle access across our threshold, which obviously isn't part of their planning application, which I know is being addressed separately. But it is just absolute carnage there whenever there's football in there.
So there's a clear and demonstrable need for the extension to the car park, which is why we need to actively pursue that as part of the refurbishment work.
Presuming there's football there this Sunday, I will go and take you some photos of exactly what we're talking about.
Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix, is it? That's the problem, and one can only rely on some common sense, I suppose. But parking on grass verges, it's not against the law. I remember when I was on Central Beds, I tried to move things around the other way and say that people should not park on grass verges, but then the council then wanted to say, well, there are some parts of Central Bedfordshire where maybe one has to park on the grass verge. But there we are. It's not a quick fix. Anyone else wish to come in on this particular bit? Okay. This one, sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Sorry, it wasn't specifically regarding the parking, but I just wanted to pick up on the what you mentioned about the all-inclusive play equipment in Grove House.
Yes.
It's quite disappointing to hear that that's already had to be called off and be put on action. Is it due to the way it's been installed, or is it just down to the quality of the equipment? And if so, is that something you should be considering for the supplier
of choice for next time around, or what's the reasons behind it?
So from what we can see, there's some buffers underneath the actual equipment which weren't in quite in the correct place. So obviously when it's hitting the ground, it's creating a lot more damage to it. The damage was quite minor from the report, but obviously when we inspected it further, it was a lot more. So when I've spoken to the supplier, and they're actually going to use something slightly sort of stronger, more substantial next time they install, and obviously make sure that it's installed fully correctly next time, sort of when they install it. So
Okay, well, we'll record our congratulations on the green flag. And I think of note that the score for the site was increased, so that was good as well. Right, UK SPF funding application.
So yes, the officers have submitted an application to the US SPF fund for improvements to Bennett's Memorial Recreation Ground, in line with the approved Green Flag Management Plan. The funding opportunity was made available at a very tight turnaround for applications. It did not allow us the time to seek a council's approval for any fresh ideas. So the application was for funding for repainting of the tennis courts and retaining it to include pickleball court markings, and including outdoor chess tables and outdoor table tennis tables. Since this report was written, I have now received a response back from US SPF with we have not sort of received the funding for that. However, we have been asked if we'd like to be put on the waiting list should additional funding be made available to us.
Yes, Councillor.
I was just going to ask on this point, because I know there were some questions raised at the time, and I don't know where we currently stand for it, so just for clarification. But I know this is, and the reasons why this was put in and quickly done to get the grant process. But obviously now, if it's going to be put on the back burner for subsequent funding, I know there's various questions around on the previous committees about whether we should look at funding, perhaps for this funding to be spread across other parks, not just to central parks, such as Bennett's in future. So I just, completely understand the reason why we had to go along with getting the grant process and that rushed in. As that's not been the case now, would that be something that would be looked at again to see if we really want to invest into this, or perhaps use that money across other?
So for this particular application, obviously the waiting list is for any application that's currently in. So obviously see if funding actually appears to sort of, if that funding to go towards that particular project. If we were looking at other parks, we'd have to look at other funding streams for that.
Yes, Town Clerk.
No, I think you're going to say deferred. So
I think the other couple of points to mention would be, obviously, as we go through the management plans, each management plan may well put similar things in, or things appropriate to each site. But the other point to note is that measures to the Bennett site are in the corporate plan. So while the joint committee may have discussed that, the joint committee doesn't represent the town council. So when we get onto the agenda items about the corporate plan in a minute, you do have the option, members, to recommend that we change things in the corporate plan. We'd rather you didn't do that very often, because obviously the whole point of the corporate plan is you give us a 4-year job and we go away and do it. But it is worth reflecting that the corporate plan is there, and if you decide you're not happy with an action, it's rather better that we know than otherwise.
Okay,
that was pretty much what I was going to suggest.
Any other comments on this aspect before we move on to the Kingsbury Recreation Ground gates, where we're going to have to make some sort of decision, or at least give a steer? Okay,
thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the Kingsbury Recreation Grounds members will recall that somebody came to this meeting to raise concerns about the fact that they would like to see the gates as self-closing gates, largely to deal with concerns about dogs off the lead being able to run out of the recreation ground. I was asked to go away and have a look at that. We've we've had a look at self-closing gate options. It actually requires the replacement of the gates entirely. With proper self-closing gates, that requires the posts to be changed, the latches to be changed, the latching mechanism. So we priced that up with the company that did the original fence work, and it comes to £2,496. Members need to decide whether or not they wish to undertake that work at that price, and if they are minded to, they would need to approve the release of that money from the fencing reserve. But I would point out to members, I'd ask them to consider not just the cost, but the fact that there are current mitigations in place on the highway side of the existing gates, which stop people running out, or dogs running out directly onto the road. There's a barrier there. And also an issue around consistency. You've got a lot of open spaces that don't have any protection whatsoever. And I think you need to be mindful that a consistent approach should be taken. I'm sure we can all think of recreation grounds in the wards that don't have the level of protection that currently exists at Kingsbury. And the other thing to point out is that whilst you would protect that end, you have an open access because of the parking that we've just been discussing onto Kingsbury Road, Kingsbury Avenue, I think it's called, which leads directly onto a very busy main road indeed. So members, I'm putting it to you that you need to maybe discuss and or make that decision.
Okay, I think putting it a slightly different way as well. Is there a particular reason for the level of security at this site as compared with any other site? Councillor Jones was first, and I think Councillor Gurney. Councillor Patchell. Yes, Councillor Jones.
Whilst over the years, I know there's been problems with the gates and the locking mechanisms, and they've been replaced several times over. Personally, I don't see the need to replace the gates at that price right this minute. I think we can spend our money more wisely on other things. There's other fencing across some of our parks and open spaces that would benefit from £2,500 worth of investment. So for me, I wouldn't do that. I just say something at this point and thank the officers for their support over the summer months with the extreme weather conditions that we had, where dog walkers were going out very late at night, walking their dogs, driving to Kingsbury to go and walk their dogs late at night, and having the gates opening extension in the car park area to 9 o'clock and beyond. They weren't shut, were they? So cars could keep getting in and out. That was gratefully received, and we're hopeful that that could still be done next year as well to support any extreme weather conditions. I know residents that made use of that were very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gurney.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to John for your report. The resident who brought this forward has asked me to read a statement, if I'm allowed, because they are not here today and they're on holiday. So they say, I still believe that the cost of just under 2,500 is worthwhile. The gates are broken. If they cannot shut and they stay closed, what is the point in having gates fitted? I'm not fighting for other parks in the town, just Kingsbury. I don't want to have to be discussing this in the future after a child is injured or worse. So that's the opinion of the resident who brought this forward. In my opinion, as a ward councillor, I would support the application to change these gates to be self-closing. I think in relation to other parks, I would say it would be as per application. If someone comes forward and they say that they want something in their park, at their local park, it would be considered at the time on whatever people are bringing forward.
Okay. Councillor Hopewell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to clarify, because my understanding was this was a self-closing gate already? It's never been a self-closing gate.
No,
Oh, okay,
it's a gate with a handle latch, a bit like an ordinary door.
right. So it's never had a self-closure.
It's a self-closing gate,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
I do see what people have said, and the other point is that, you know, if something's, well, this will be have to tell me if it's strong winds like today and it's just left there, it's just banging away. Does it not create a
Well, I
a
managed to
problem for?
open it and close it today, so.
But do people, if it's not self-closure, do people leave it open and
Some
leave it
people-
banging in the wind, or?
Some people leave it open, it's too heavy to bang in the wind.
Right. Okay.
It's a heavy gate, but
Mhm.
it hasn't not worked for months now. I don't think I've had to report the handle broken or missing for absolutely months now. So I have to say, I thought she was talking about the gates in the play area, the safe closing gates in the play area. That's what I thought the resident was talking, because that's similar to an issue that I think Councillor Katarski.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up.
And that's what I thought she was complaining about. I don't see, and that's why I've said I don't see a need to replace them, because I go in those parks every day, shut the gate, and it locks at both ends of Jeans.
Because that was a thing I was going to bring up as well, because I believe that this is similar to what Councillor Katarski had brought up about in Downside Recreation Ground, which was the self-closure. But I noticed that wasn't on the report, so I didn't know if that was a separate thing or whether that's.
It's a separate matter. There's a separate type of self-closing gate on a playground. And we identified two that needed replacing based on the inspection report that we got, but they are very low risk. They're classed as very low risk. We've now got a much higher risk with a similar gate at Grove House Gardens, which we've had to lock shut whilst we organise the replacement. So we are going to be replacing some of the self-closing gates, the highest priorities first, followed then by the lower priorities later on. So there will be some self-closing gates replaced over the next few months.
I was, sorry if I'm just come back on that, Chair. It was, one thing concerns me is obviously with where we have got the self-closures and not that, particularly on play equipment or play areas, if we've got that gate that's could potentially take a kid's fingers off or something like that, then we need to make sure it's barricaded off or it's taken off its hinges would be a safer thing than just leaving it to potentially cause a problem. And the other thing I was just going to raise as well was about Councillor Jones mentioned about the park opening hours in Kingsbury till 9 o'clock. Is that going to be looked at particularly for other years? Because I know there's one occasion where someone nearly got locked in with their car when it didn't think it was closing at 8 o'clock, and it's great that it's been extended to 9 o'clock, but I know that we have contractors that go and lock this up on our behalf, don't they? So I don't know what the agreement is or whether it's been looked at for other years or.
Well, the agreement is that it will be shut at 8 o'clock, and I think most of the car parks have a sign on to say that they'll be shut at 8 o'clock. We need to double check that to make sure they haven't been nicked or taken away or whatever it happens to be. But there should be a sign saying these gates shut at 8 o'clock. I'm not sure there is one at Kingsbury, so that's maybe something that we need to rectify. The reason why the gates are shut at 8 o'clock is to prevent people congregating and making a lot of noise, which is a problem that I inherited when I first came here in 2009. And that's why we shut the gates.
One gate.
Yeah, one gate, yeah. The extension to leaving them open was in response to a particular request, and I think we could do that across the board as those requests come in the future. But at the moment, the contractual arrangement is that they're shut at 8 o'clock for the other reasons that I've stated.
Right, we've got Councillors Bater, Tamara and Brennan in that order. So Councillor Bater.
I think sort of paying this money out isn't necessary. If there's an entrance where a child can run out at the other end, then, or even if the child runs out through the top end, the parents should be looking after their children and making sure they don't run away. And if there's an entrance where the child can get out or a dog can get out, a bigger entrance where the cars come in, that is more dangerous than the gate that they could get out of at the top. So I can't see the justification in spending it.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Tamara?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted clarification on this. The gate at the moment, can a child open the gate? Or is it always open, or somebody have to open and close it? Is it
Open and
broken?
Close it as you go in, you open and close it. So it's my height, the gate's my height,
Right,
the gate handle up the top. So unless you're a child of, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 that's got height, you won't get to it. Your parent have to get to
right.
it.
So in that, if the gate is not broken, I think, I don't find it necessary for us to spend the funds replacing something that's not broken. Whereas other, self-closing gate actually do need the fund, and I think this council, we have to realize that our budget, we have to keep a tight lead on what we spend and how we spend taxpayers' money. And I think if it's not broken, we'll fix it. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan?
I just wanted to say, in Bruce Hill Park doesn't have self-closing gates, and the road in Brewers Hill is, people drive really recklessly on that road, and I would say much more frequently than people drive on Jeans Way. That's just my own observations. We have like traffic calming measures on Brewers Hill because of the speeding on Brewers Hill, and if one park in the town needs self-closing gates because an open gate would be dangerous to children, I would say that Brewers Hill would be a more fitting recipient of self-closing gates for that reason. So for that, I don't think it would be necessary to fit self-closing gates to Jeans Way at this point in time. It would be great if we could just fit it to all parks, but at like £2.5 man, Steve.
There was a case, I think it was about 1956, Lewisham and Carmarthenshire County Council, where a child ran out from a school straight into the road. It was at that point that bars were put at the entrance, so you couldn't run straight out. And I believe there is a bar on Jeans Way.
Both gates have got the bars, the barriers.
Both gates then, so nobody can run straight out into the road. So there is that security. When it comes to dogs, if people are concerned about their dog, then it should be on a lead.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So, trying to sum up then, I understand there is not a notice on the gate saying please close the gate. That might be something that we could look at. That might jog a few people into closing the gates properly. But otherwise, as I said, and has been picked up really, is there a particular matter, security matter for this particular gate as opposed to elsewhere? And we've heard that elsewhere it might be more in need. But members of the committee, if we can perhaps take a vote so that we can give a steer as to whether or not to change the gate at that cost. Can I have a show of hands that we do not replace the gate? Members of the committee, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Members who feel that we should replace the gate. 1. So we are not going to replace the gate. Thank you. Right, recreation ground management. Sorry, Councillor Davis.
That's right, excuse me, for the record, can you show that I abstained on that vote, please?
Okay, fine, thank you. Right, recreation ground management plan.
I'll just mention this one very quickly, Chair. As you're aware, we're doing the Kingsbury, Downs Road and Brewers Hill recreation ground management plans. So a little bit behind schedule at the moment. We had a first meeting last week. It was an officer member workshop, if you like, to discuss the outcome of the consultation. I think it was very well received by those who attended, and thank you for that. It's given me a steer to be able to produce the management plan to put towards to put to you in November. There are 2 more dates coming up in the end of September and mid-October for Downs Road and then Brewers Hill Recreation Ground, and some members have indicated that they will also be attending. Others are encouraged to do so where they're ward members. Just the ward members at this stage, plus the chair and the vice chair. But that was just a little update on that.
It's having discussed the way that the management plan can be put together for Kingsbury, that will be a blueprint in many ways for how we can progress with the other areas. Town gardens and town centre.
Sorry, can we?
Yes, sorry, Councillor Atwell.
I just wanted to know where we are with the grounds management plans, because obviously, you know, from the action tracker and things that we sort of behind with the way where we are with things at the moment. Obviously, it's you know, completely understand it's a big piece of work, but I'm rather concerned that if we're getting behind with the first years, it's going to take knock-on effects to others. Just to understand the reasons why we are so far behind with it, so we can make sure primarily that going forward we can get some of those blockers removed and make sure we run much more fluid in future.
I would say, Chair, very simply put, the pressure of other projects, some of them taking longer to come to fruition than we'd anticipated, but freeing up officer time to make sure that we do we follow a very robust process. And I think we've learned a lot from the first round of consultation. And if we get the blueprint right, it'll become much quicker for the second and third years. So I know that we're playing catch up. We're going to try and do the consultation for the next 3 towards the end of this year, and then get everything signed off this November, and then again March, April, May time next year, which will allow us to catch up. But I would say simply the pressure of other works and not anticipating that it would be quite so time consuming.
Councillor Gurney.
I just wanted to add to that having attended that meeting, although I didn't give feedback that was previously asked for, it was I thought the meeting was very helpful for me to be able to give input and also to see what ideas were being put forward by John and his team. So I would encourage all the ward members to attend these workshops. I do think they would be very beneficial to each ward.
I think the fact that we are going to do management plans for all our areas, that's the important thing. And as John said, if we get the blueprint right, then it'll be faster and we can probably begin to catch up a little bit. Okay, town gardens and town centre.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The summer bedding plants, hanging baskets and tiered planters throughout the town have been a great success, creating some fantastic fall displays in the town this year. These are due to be removed in late September, and the fall displays, winter bedding, will be started in early October. Members will also be aware that in the corporate plan includes an objective to secure land and create a pocket park on College Drive. Officers began the process of agreeing ahead of terms to obtain the land. A £20,000 budget has been established to undertake landscape works, and officers are working on a design brief which will be presented in the November meeting for the committee for approval.
Any comments on that section? Yes, I think we're getting it for about £1, but from Luton. But on the other hand, the legal costs are going to be a little bit more than £1, I think. Speaking as a lawyer, yeah. Yeah, so there will be an opportunity to have a discussion as to what we feel would be useful on that particular piece of land. We say there is a budget sort of established, but exactly what we're going to do is there for November. Okay, town rangers.
The town rangers have continued to work systematically in all of the Dunstable wards and on a clinical basis for a couple of weeks at a time. The rangers also assisted in the preparation for Angry and Bloom and the Green Flag juggling. The Rangers continue to support the delivery and maintenance of the splash park through daily water setup and monitoring activities. The splash park has recently been finished, so it had been closed off for the winter season.
Yes, I think the thought was that when it reopened again next year, that hopefully some of the problems we've had this year will not be experienced next year. Okay, I think Catherine Doyle, it's your turn. I think Green Space Projects.
Thank you, Chair.
You're going to plant 40,000 bulbs for us.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So regarding the 40th anniversary tree and bulb planting, members will recall that it was agreed to plant 40 trees, 40,000 bulbs and a seed giveaway to celebrate the 40th anniversary at a cost of £7,750. It was agreed that officers would approach Central Bedfordshire Council for their tree grant scheme for further funding of £5,000. However, recently the council has been advised that this year the CBC tree grant will not be operating. However, they did point us in the direction of approaching other sources of funding, one of which was the Tree Council's Branching Out Fund, and officers have submitted an application for £2,500 from the Tree Council. The outcome of this bid will be announced in October 2025. Therefore, officers are reviewing the original costings and the specifications for the tree element of celebrating the 40th anniversary, and are looking at alternative species of tree and smaller trees as a way of still delivering the 40 trees. The funding put aside also included £1,000 towards the costs of tools and equipment to aid volunteer planting, and this aspect of the funding may also be reviewed as part of the funding of this project.
Sort of bring your own spade. Yeah, clearly a bit of financial juggling going on here, so that we can do our best to meet what our initial intention was. Just break there, Councillor Jones.
Can I just ask about the 40,000 bulbs? Are we still doing that?
We are. Yes, we're going ahead.
And that's in addition to the 4,000 bulbs that the Rotary Club of Dunstable are purchasing for planting as well.
Yeah.
We look forward to a very colourful spring.
So the digital map that we've now got of where our existing planting is, have we got any ideas and plans as to where we're going to?
Yes, we have for the 40,000 bulbs. So we wanted to make sure that each ward of the town was included, but we also wanted to make sure that there was a big display of bulbs so that they're not kind of bitty plantings all around the town. So there will be 5 locations throughout the different wards, and that will include central, north, east, south and west. And local schools and communities will be invited to take part in planting. Any questions? Any further questions?
Okay, any volunteers to wield a...
Do we have any idea of timescales for planting?
Well, we're hoping to get some of the planting, most of the planting done throughout October.
Okay.
But it may go into November.
John, can I just add that whilst Kathy was making the application for Tree Council Branching Out Fund, she was advised that it had been closed as well. So she then received an email to say, but you can still submit, and we don't know what that will mean now. So we are hoping that it will be considered, but we cannot give it that guarantee. We may have to come back to you with a further update, certainly at the November meeting. But it does make it very frustrating for Kathy trying to secure the funding. But that's one of the issues that we face. So.
Okay. Church Street phone box.
So the Church Street phone box project, the defibrillator has now been registered and installed and is fully operational and has already been put to use. As Chair mentioned earlier, the unforeseen installation of the utilities box next to the phone kiosk has meant that this project has experienced a delay. And we have had to procure alternative planters that would fit into the remaining available space. The planters are actually due for delivery next week, and volunteers from Dunstable in Bloom will be invited to plant the planters, the alternative planters. And once that element of the project is complete, that means that the project will come to its completion, and a date for the official opening will be arranged with the town mayor and councillors and other guests who have participated in the project, and invites will be sent out at that point. Any questions?
Questions? Happy with that? Okay, let's move on.
So the pergola element of the pergola and knee rail project has now been completed. The QR codes have been installed that allow visitors to access further historic content, which is hosted on the council's website. And the official opening to celebrate the completion of the pergola project will happen tomorrow afternoon on Tuesday, the 16th of September in Priory Gardens at 2 p.m. And it is hoped that many councillors will be able to attend that event. Officers are also currently working with the designer to progress works for the knee rail element of this project, with delivery envisaged in 2026. Any questions?
Questions? Happy with that? Okay, right. Move on to Anglia in Bloom. I think there's some news that we've already seen, but formally results to the committee.
So just to reference what you probably already know and have heard, that Dunstable were chosen as the overall winner for Anglia in Bloom 2026 out of the 27 communities that took part this year, which is a fantastic achievement. You will all have seen the social media with all the other bits and pieces of awards that we've won, including the award for Downside in the industrial commercial category. I can't remember them all now. It's funny, I've suddenly gone blank. The Cemetery winning its overall award. Best large town category, gold for Grovehouse Gardens, gold for Bennett's, and so on and so forth. We really did come home with a haul of awards, and I know that the mayor was very pleased to represent the town. And I just want to reference, it's not possible without the support of everybody in the council, your support as well as members, but equally all the partnership work that goes on and the projects that go on, even without the council or without Dunstable and Bloom, that we showcase. But the partnership between the council and Dunstable and Bloom is very strong, is to be commended, and that's why we get the success. One of the things that the judges have said is the community spirit here is very, very strong. So I just wanted to reference that, members. Thank you.
I'm sure members would like to have recorded in the minutes our congratulations to all concerned, including those outside bodies that contributed so much, and particularly obviously to our ground staff who do such a wonderful job with the planting, and remembering that the planting now will be disappearing very soon, and the next planting will be done. Right, questions?
It is outstanding.
It is outstanding, yes. I remember I did go to one of the award ceremonies a few years ago, and when we got to the second and third award, we decided we'd take it in turns to go up. There were 6 of us, and all 6 of us had gone up. We decided, well, we'd have to start all over again. So we got another 3. So some people would have done twice. And it sounds like that, it's like that this year as well. Good, congratulations. Councillor Atwell.
Yeah, I just wanted to pass on my sincere thanks to John. It's not just John, but it's the whole team. I mean, it really is an outstanding success. And, you know, I know the standards have been high for over the years, but to get acclaimed as the overall winner, I think it's great for John in his career to have got that, because I know the other day he was telling me he's been trying for decades to get there. So to have achieved that before, you know, retirement and things, that is a wonderful, outstanding achievement that you can look back on forever, really, to say you've actually done it, because otherwise it's always something that may have been. So I think it's a fantastic achievement, John. Well done. But as I say, it's as you say, it's the whole team that make that happen. Right from the grounds team to yourselves and Kathy and everyone else that's involved in all this grounds operations. It's a wonderful team that you've got, and to collaborate together like that, it doesn't just happen. So well done and congratulations.
I personally think it's down to Daniel arriving.
It's a Daniel effect.
I think he came late in the day for the planning of this. Yes, Councillor Gurney.
Does this mean that Dunstable will go forward to represent the region in the national awards next year, like they did a couple of years ago?
The answer to that is that at the Anglo and Bloom trustees have to decide who to go to put forward, and then they have to invite us, and then they have to ask us whether we would like to participate. I don't know the answer to that question, but you can work it out though.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on record saying, in line with Councillor Atwell, well done, John, and your team. Remarkable achievement.
Thank you.
Good. I don't want to go into his head. Okay, well, thank you to the 4 of you for that report. We'll now move on to Antisocial Behaviour Working Group, which has resulted in a way from a member of the public bringing 1 or 2 things to our attention, and this is the way in which we're looking to help either solve the problems or at least to look at the problems and look at possible solutions that may or may not be possible. John, you're going to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Hollick has kind of given you a bit of background to that, and particularly something that he wanted to make happen with regard to responding to residents. There is a perception that we have an increase in antisocial behaviour across our open spaces of all types, and so we're really proposing that the working group is set up to consider some of those points, but it won't just be an officer member working group. We would like to also include people from our colleagues from Central Bedfordshire, where appropriate, from the community safety team, and also possibly, hopefully, a presence from the police as well. Just to begin to discuss what's being done and what more could be done in the future, I put the scope in there to indicate at 3.1 the types of antisocial behaviour that we would be looking at. And then I've put at 3.3 some objectives with regard to, fully assessing and understanding what the statistics are telling us, because there will be statistics about antisocial behaviour, but they're only as good as the amount of information that's given and or reported. The extent to which we might capture additional information, look at the current partnership working arrangements and see if they can be improved. Will that help? The opportunity to employ third-party patrolling of security contractors. There's sometimes a need for that. Examine the enforcement powers. The council doesn't really hold any enforcement powers. Can it adopt any in the future? The role that CCTV might play in deterring it, and whether or not there are opportunities for some target hardening at some of the sites where this sort of thing occurs. I've just given you a bit of an outline of the objectives. That list is not exhaustive. You could add additional objectives if you want to, or the working group could consider those in more detail when it first meets. The recommendation is that members approve the establishment of a working group and adopt the scope and objectives for consideration by that working group, where they may wish to modify those very slightly, and the members decide who amongst them would want to participate in the working group.
Thank you. Councillor Commando, Madam Mayor.
Just two questions of clarity. Are you going to involve the community within this working group?
There's no plan to involve the community at the moment, but if the working group considers that that's a way forward, then we would have to establish how we might be able to do that. So that could be given consideration, but I think it's up to the working group to discuss the role that the community might be able to play in that.
Sometimes it's putting that responsibility also to the public. If you look through the Facebook pages, so many people have different things to suggest, but it's just picking up who are these community representatives.
I don't know whether there's an active neighbourhood watch, but it might well be possible to be able to do that through your kind of neighbourhood watch type groups, so that you get a representative of the community rather than a kind of a free for all. It would be difficult to manage. Yeah.
And the other question, will you have a consultation if you decide to involve the members of the community? Will you have a consultation, or is it just going to be a committee group that?
Again, I think this is something which the working group will establish the need for whether or not there will be a consultation. And what I think is, although I've given some objectives and some scope, I think the working group needs to work through the processes, the information, and then make those sorts of decisions there, or reference that back up to this committee here. So it's not a yes, it's not a no, it's a possibly maybe.
Thank you for answering.
Councillor Antwerp.
I just wanted to clarify, obviously, as you correctly state here, that tackling antisocial behaviour, we need to have on board the police and Central Bed. Has anything been reached out to them to find out what their appetite of that is? Hopefully they would want to engage, but has there been any preliminary questions asked in that respect?
We haven't reached out yet. That's something that we would need to do. If you decide that you want to establish the group, that's something we would need to do. If they weren't to participate, it might make the work of the group rather limited, because they're the people that have got access to a lot of the statistical information. We've got a lot of anecdotal information that as officers we collect, and I know Mary does record some bits of antisocial behaviour going on at the cemetery in particular. So we'll have to reach out and see whether there's an appetite. I need to know that there's an appetite in this room first. Really.
I'm trying to respond to that appetite. Are members going to approve the establishment of a working group first of all? Hands up, those who feel you're right. Yes. Okay, so we've achieved that. And the next thing is to decide who's going to participate in that working group. And I would suggest perhaps 5 people. Councillor Brenner Hassett, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I suppose I should be on it. 5.
22 of us. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's
Make
put.
sure got the name so Kelly knows who we are.
Yes, so it's Brenner Hassett from our at 12. Henderson, Follett, and Adams as well.
We can accommodate, because there will be times when you can't
7 of us. Well, it's an odd number again. Okay, fine. Might we be able to hold a meeting before the end of September? Pushing it a bit.
It's going to be late October, probably.
Okay, well, it's late October, early November, so I'm away in October.
I'll try and work it around your.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I will respond to the member of the community who raised the matter and just let that person know that we are setting up a working group, and possibly, I did discuss this earlier, send that person a copy of the agenda so that they can see, particularly under 200/25, exactly what it is we're proposing to do. It's going to be a fair piece of work because it is across the open the sort of spaces that we've got across the council's green spaces. So it could be a fairly a fair number of meetings, I think, to be quite honest. Okay, well, that's the start anyway. So thank you for that. Moving on, reserve spending, Markham Crescent knee rail.
Thank you, Chair.
Daniel, thank you.
So the purpose of this report is to seek approval for the release of funds from the fencing reserve to repair the knee rail around Markham Crescent Recreation Ground. The recommendation is the committee approve the release of £6,912 from the fencing reserve for the replacement of the knee rail at Markham Crescent Park. The council currently manages a small open space at Markham Crescent, consisting of a small children's play area within a larger grassed area. This space is situated to the rear of residential housing, giving access to the property's garages, but also used as general parking. The boundary of the open space is marked by a wooden knee rail, which also prevents vehicles accessing the grassed area. The knee rail around the open space is in a poor condition and has become broken in places, and the wood has started to rot. The damaged knee rail has created gaps providing unauthorised vehicle access. Over recent months, a number of vehicles have been parking inappropriately beyond what remains of the knee rail. A number of residents have expressed concern for the safety of people using the space. To make this area secure and exclude vehicles from grassed area, it will be necessary to replace the entire length of the knee rail on a like-for-like basis. A quote has been obtained to replace 216 metres of knee rail at the cost of £6,912. The fencing reserve currently sits at £14,000 and there is sufficient funding available to undertake these works. If members are minded to approve the spending proposal, this would leave a balance of £7,888 in the fencing reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Gurney, Councillor Jones.
Thank you for your report. Thank you for the very detailed report on this. This has been something that's been ongoing throughout the summer. I must have been getting reports every couple of weeks from residents complaining about it, with cars even driving across the park, not just parking. What they've been doing is using it as an additional car park, really, to enter. There has been some unauthorised development work taking place also adjacent to the park on the access road, which hasn't helped. But regardless of that, there are all these cars are still parking there. I've been down there several times and I've seen more and more cars getting into the park and using it as an additional parking area. And so I would support the replacement of the knee rail.
Thank you. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Have we considered an alternative to having a knee rail around the whole 216 metres, of having post pillars put in at periodic gaps where cars can't get through? Surely that would be cheaper than a knee rail of 216 metres long. It seems a lot of money for a knee rail if we could put pillars in instead.
We'll let that question hang in the air for the moment. Councillor Atwell, then Councillor Brenner-Hassett.
Thank you, Chair. This at least start my question there, but yeah, mine's a similar sort of thing. You know, it does seem an awful amount, a lot of amount, £6,900, nearly £7,000 just spending on a knee rail. You know, and also if we're going to be using wood, then obviously we're going to have the same sort of situation again in X amount of years' time. Could we not think about, you know, like a concrete bollards in places that obviously they might be more expensive, but in the long run they're not going to rot? Or alternatively, could we look at a more ecological sort of type of solution as a fence, as a hedging, or trees or some hedging that'll go in? Because all you really want to do is stop the cars going onto the field. And that would be, you know, much more long term.
So we did look at a longer term option of using a metal sort of fencing at periodic sections. But the cost of that was coming out £15,400, which we thought was extremely a lot higher and obviously far beyond what we currently have available to us. In regard to putting in any sort of shrubbery to prevent that, we would, in the meantime, we would still have to put some form of fencing there. Otherwise, that would get damaged very, very quickly, and obviously it would prevent it from actually establishing well enough to create that situation. So,
just thought, obviously, you could use some sort of smaller, cheaper wooden post with some chicken wire or something, just to stop, you know, because you're only really protecting the shrubbery. And if you bought a hedging that's really quite developed, then that might be a more.
It's just something, creating something for the current time that is actually going to be sufficient in order to stop people coming through while that would establish. So again, anything such as chicken wire or something very temporary might not give it enough protection in order for it to establish fully, in order then for a longer term solution to be protected through hedging.
Chair, if I may, the option in front of you is the cheapest cost option by far, in the short term. In the long term, obviously something very robust, and the establishment of a hedge would be great. But you've then got to keep that hedge very low. It is easy to, you know, if you want a robust hedge, you've got to have a very wide hedge. That means you're going to have to plant at double or triple spacings. For a hedge, that's going to increase your costs quite significantly as well. If we go with the wooden knee rail, we can keep on top of replacing any items that are vandalised or broken. It won't rot probably much within the first 10-12 years. It's that period. So it's been there at least 15 years. It's been repaired occasionally. What we need to do is to keep on top of the repairs better in the future once the new one is in. So it is the best cost option given the budget that you have available from the reserve. And sorry, the whole 216 metres needs to be protected. It isn't a few bollards here and a few bollards there. There are no features along that boundary line that currently exist to provide any protection at all. So that's why you have to do the whole 216 metres. Sorry, I interrupted.
Councillor Hassett and then Councillor Gurney.
My question's been answered there. I was going to
Okay.
suggest alternative materials, but
Thank you. Councillor Gurney, do you want to come?
No, I'm happy with what the officers have told us.
Okay. The only question, Councillor Martin.
Chair, all I was going to say is, listening to John coming back there, I think it's reasonable to actually have this replaced. The reserve is there, and we actually haven't spent all of the reserve, and it's not coming out of the general reserve. This is for the fencing, from the fencing reserve. I think it's reasonable to replace this, especially if we're talking about 10 years investment. I think that's reasonable to do, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. The only question I would ask, if you do approve this sum of money, is there sufficient left in the funds based on current knowledge of other areas that might need to be considered?
So as part of the budget setting, Chair, for this autumn, winter into the spring for next year, we'll have to present, we may have to present an increase in the amount required in the fencing reserve, because we've got some other fencing issues that we will also need to bring forward and deal with in due course.
Okay. Right, looking at that recommendation, are members prepared to release that £6,912 from the fencing reserve? Those in favour, please. Anyone against? Any abstentions? You have £6,912.
Not a penny more.
Right, final, well, last but one actually, corporate plan update. I think this is Clark.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So as members of the services will be aware, we're doing this delivery committee. So what you have are two appendices. You have an appendix which lists the corporate plan actions which sit under this committee. So the actions, we will update this every year going forward with 6 monthly through updates. This is the first full update you've had of this plan. It lists a whole number of actions under this committee. Some of them are done, some of them are part way through, some of them we always knew were aspirational, and as yet we haven't got the resources to do. So it's very unlikely we'll achieve all the actions, but by having quite a number of aspirational actions, that means we are then free to pursue the ones where resources or funding become available as we go through. So happy to take any questions on any individual actions. And the second appendix you have are the KPIs, so corporate plan key performance indicators. So again, it's the first time you've seen this. You'll have this report every year. The report you've got effectively goes up till the end of March. It would have come in June, but we didn't have a compliance manager, so it's a bit delayed. There are a few where we need to set benchmarks. So we haven't got figures this year, but we will have next year, because we're just doing the survey work now to have the benchmarks in place to be able to report against next year. I think the thing I've really emphasised about KPIs, we're not trying to create targets which we then make officers chase the target, because actually officers know, we know what officers need to be doing. It's just trying to give you a way of better understanding what we're trying to do, having some things which will hopefully give you prompts to ask questions and understand how we're performing against what we thought we would do. Overperforming or underperforming isn't necessarily a bad thing. It depends on the story behind that and why those things have happened. Certainly in year one, there'll probably be some that look like we've done amazingly well. That might be because we got the benchmark wrong in the first place, rather than because we're quite as amazing as we look. And the same could be true in reverse. If it looks like we're underperforming, actually, maybe we slightly misunderstood what we were going to achieve. So happy to take questions on. And just to note that the ones related to Bennett Splash actually don't sit with this committee anymore. So the next iteration of this report, they will be with community services, because the Bennett's Cafe is now managed through the community services staff team.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Well, I just want to check I've understood what you said about the objectives here. Do we have the resources in place to keep the ones on track that are on track and the ones delayed to get going, or do we need to review the objectives for this in line with the financial plan that will support it at some point?
So at this point, I don't think we need to do that.
Okay.
So there are some, whether marked as aspirational, we never set a budget. So it's fine if we don't have resource, because if we do, we do, we don't, we don't.
Yeah.
At this stage, we're kind of halfway through the cycle. So it's too early to have that conversation around are the right resources in place to deliver. Maybe this time next year, that'll be a bit more of an interesting conversation to have in terms of priorities.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
What's happening with the Bowls Club?
Just stolen my question.
Sorry.
There are two parts to the project. There's the refurbishment of the existing pavilion and changing rooms, which is where we also pick up the opportunity to deal with the potential, get a price for solar panels on the roof, and also the extension to the car park, which we discussed earlier on. Then the other part of the project is the relocation of the Bowls Club to the site, where they will take on part of the building, build an extension, recreate the bowling green on the present footprint. That part of the project is the part that's delayed because we're very much in the hands of the Bowls Club, and they're very much in the hands of the developer who's trying to get the planning permission to be able to develop the site on which they currently sit. So I haven't had any correspondence from the Bowls Club in recent months. It's very much kind of developer led. Once the developer gets what he needs by way of his planning consent, then that starts the domino effect for the rest of it. So everything we're doing is kind of planning to be ready for when that when that occurs.
So we have a certain amount of money earmarked for that repair to that building. What I'm worried is with increases of time, you have increasing costs. So are we going to continue the repairs of the pavilion as we've set out? Or are we waiting for the Bowls Club? Because as I understood it when I was chair, that could continue indefinitely. Waiting for the Bowls Club, I mean.
We're going to carry on with the repairs to refurbish the part of the building that we're going to retain for changing facilities. We're going to do the whole of the roof for the whole building.
Yeah.
Then we'll look at the photovoltaics and we'll look at the car park costs as well. That I'm hoping will go out to tender before Christmas, with me being able to bring a report back, I hope in January, but it could be as late as March, and then we can then get on with the job and make that happen. The best time to do it is in the closed football season, because if the work happens before then, it would be disruptive to football. However, we would, if we need to crack on with the work, then and make a start partway through the season, then we'll seek to try and accommodate and work with football clubs in order to make it happen. At the end of the day, they will be the recipients of a very nice set of new changing rooms. I'm anticipating that they would want to use a really bad part to play ball.
Councillor Jones, then Councillor Tomorrow.
So we've talked about extending the car park as you come into the park area. Are we still considering then the refurbishment of what was the old tennis courts and creating that into car parking space as well? At the same time, what's happening to the old tennis courts?
There's no plan to refurbish the tennis courts for parking, but the ground would be made available in its current form to allow the Bowls Club to park on there, as per the previous discussions and approvals we've had through this committee. It won't be improved. It would be a cost that the Bowls Club would need to find to improve their own parking facility. So they would come through an extended car park and they would park beyond the extended car park on the old site in its current form as it presently stands. If funding is available to the Bowls Club, then they would probably want to put an e-rail around it and try and resurface it. At the moment, their intention is to use it as it is.
Just add to that to say, obviously, with the Bowls Club coming in with people from a wider area, it wouldn't be viable for them to use the Bowls Club without having close parking to it. So it's kind of an unavoidable thing to do. But the hope is that once the Bowls Club are there and present and parking there in and out, that actually makes the whole area more occupied in the daytime evenings, which makes it a safer place for everyone by their ongoing presence.
Is there an impact with the residents though, being so close to those tennis courts, having vehicle movement potentially? Because that's quite, I mean, it's a heavily used dog walk along the back of there and everything, and that rightly or wrongly, a number of the properties do have access gates to the park area that have happened over the years. I'm just concerned that traffic movement at the back of those garden areas is potentially a danger.
I would say that the greater impact would be turning where they form tennis courts into a netball facility, which has been suggested, or another type of Muga, because of the proximity to gardens and the impact that would have. That's not a suitable space for that type of use, but I think it would be suitable space for light vehicle movement, and that's what it'll be, light vehicle movement.
Councillor Tomorrow and then Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. John, I wonder if you can clarify for me, in the development of the provisional green space, over the busway, we talked about this in the main report, the land that we just got for £1. Now, in the main report, you said the £20,000 has been established. But in the tracker, you said 20,000 funding secured with £10,000 to be spent by March 26. two questions for you, sir. Can you clarify for me whether if the funding is actually being secured and where from? If this is being generated or being established from a budget, what reserve is this coming out from? And can you just clarify that?
So there's a 20,000, sorry, there's a £10,000 council budget that was established that we've got available in a reserve. It's a one-off sum of money that's been set aside. It's not contributed to on an annual basis like some of the other reserves. There is also £10,000 secured from the joint committee with a target to spend by the end of March 2026.
Right.
But it may be necessary to go back to that committee and seek approval to extend that, which is in their gift to do so. I'm also told that there is another £2,500, which would give us £22,500, which is secured from Groundwork Trust.
Right.
Something that my colleague Becky Wisby has managed to secure as well. So that's the makeup of the 22,500.
Okay.
Apologies, I should have added the other £2,500.
Yes, I just think the report itself is not clear enough. If the funding is actually being secured or is proposing to be secured rather, because this is not guarantee. If they decide not to extend it, then what do you do? So yeah, I think the report needs to be slightly clearer as to whether, because in my mind, within the report, I thought that this would be paid for within our budgets as a council, not external funding being secured. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Hi, again. So number 30 on the list is carry out feasibility study to identify an open space in one of our current parks that could be used for dog activities. Sounds awesome. Could we not implement that within the management plans for the parks? As part of doing the management plans for the parks, we can assess them for the possibilities of dog activities. I don't know what dog activities are, but I went to Houghton Regis, like Houghton Rocks, and they had a dog show, which was an external company that came in and did like a little dog show as part of the event. Just as a supplementary, you could maybe talk to those people and have them at a future Dunstable Town Council event where we would have a dog show. There's loads of dog people in Dunstable. I've got dogs. They're horrible dogs, but like that's a thing you could do, and you could, that not to tick a box, but that's something that would be it would not cost anything necessarily within the budget, and you could do that for the people of the town as part of an event. Also, there was another point, which was number 33, which is look to maintain more of the grass verges across our town and then smarten them up. That within resources, it says funding to be sought from CBC. I don't hold out much hope that that's something that's going to happen, although perhaps you'll say, nah, it's happened and it's a miracle, everything's great. They're going to pay us some money to do this thing. But is there any chance that going forward, like we could maybe take it in turns to highlight an area within the town that we might foot the bill for and go, actually, it would be a really good idea if we just tidied up this area, even though it's not within our purview, it would really benefit that particular ward because, you know, for whatever reason, like management of that piece of land is lacking, and I know that we shouldn't be doing stuff that we don't get paid for, but I kind of think that that's also what we should be doing, because we're a town council and we're supposed to be promoting the town and making it better for residents and stuff. So if that's something that we could look at in the future, just where we would take it in turns 1 quarter and go, this ward, they get a special piece of land that they can just point a finger at a piece of land and go, ah, do that. I know we do it with the town rangers anyway, but you know, probably be a good idea. What do you think? Anyone? No, thanks.
I've got, do you want to come back on that, or let's move on then a little bit? Councillor Atwell, Councillor Jones and Councillor Kearney, I've got in that order.
Okay, thank you, Chair. A couple of things. The first point I'd like to ask is about point 26 regarding the plan for the cemetery. I know we touched on the point earlier on, but I noticed in the comments there that the next stage is to procure the consultants, and we've talked about obviously finalising purchase of the land. Have we got any sort of timescales and how that
So I'm currently working on producing a document which is effectively a procurement document allowing us to choose the right consultants to engage. And once that's been out through Contract Finder and through our procurement process, we'll have some figures in place which we'll bring to committee, because you as a committee will need to decide who we're going to appoint. I'm working on that now. I've got a target to try and complete that exercise by the end of this year, so that we know who we're working with going into the new year. It's not something we've ever done, so there is an element of having to prepare this documentation and review it and so on and so forth. I'm fairly confident that we could be in a position to procure and appoint our consultants in the new year, and then that will allow us to begin to make progress on design, the rest of the feasibility work, using what I call the RIBA architectural stages for a project of this nature, and then each one's being asked to price all the various RIBA stages. So that piece of work's going on at the moment. Is that the question you asked?
Okay, yeah, sorry. The other question was just touching on what Councillor Brennan mentioned about the feasibility study to identify space in the park. One of the parks could be used for dog activities. I think we had this discussed before at committee. I think Councillor Jones brought it as well. We both, it's more along the lines of, rather than it being a dog show, it being you know, like an area for exercising dogs, to activities that they can run across and that sort of thing, more like a course, yeah, like a obstacle type course that they can go across and run around and things like that. Just something to be aware of is that I know down in Mentmore, obviously at the chalk pit there at Kensworth, they have a management study, a management agreement that they have to maintain all of the woodlands around there, and obviously being a resident, I see all the time they have to cut down huge trees and things like that, and it doesn't seem to be that they know what to do with them, and they have them all stacked up in the woods, literally rotting away. So I'm just thinking that, you know, we've got a feasibility of a park there, we've got a feasibility of wood and things like that. We've even got people like men in sheds that I'm sure would be capable of putting something together as well, or possibly, obviously, we've got health and safety, everything to think of as well. But I'm just thinking that we've got resources around here that it may be an idea to think about, or see if we could approach even the Kensworth Quarry to see if that wood is available, and if it is, what we could do with it. Because, you know, it could be brought together as a community project. We have the skills available to do it, and the materials could be sourced at little or no cost. Yeah. So it may be something to consider or look into.
I would say on that latter point, it's very important that you procure products that are designed for the specific purpose from suppliers who provide this type of equipment. I think that's absolutely key, because you've got health and safety considerations, you've got risk management considerations, you've got insurance liability considerations to take account of. And the job of procuring, getting a third party to design something and then procuring it from them is a completely different project to deciding to take some wood out of a woodland and get 3 or 4 partners working together. It's far too complex a way to deliver that.
Okay, I was just thinking about,
So,
even though we had
it's a good bit of
plans,
thinking.
you know, if I'm not saying just they'd knock it together on the cuff, there would actually have proper plans that we looked at and
You know, but somebody would have to sit and design that.
Yeah, I realise.
I don't have the ability within my team to be able to take that forward.
Okay.
That's why we would look to, you know, suppliers and providers for that. I haven't made any progress on this yet. The feasibility would be, where could we put it and how much would it be? Where we could put it is a piece of work that could be done, as Councillor Brennan suggested, through the management plans. That's an ideal situation. And 1 or 2 of the consultations have got those suggestions in there. Members though will have to consider potentially making very difficult decisions about where it's going to allocate its money for various projects, especially when there's a knowledge and an understanding that there's a need to invest in your playgrounds. And there will be some difficult decisions to make about where you prioritise the funding.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. That's hence the reason why I was trying to suggest the cost-effective solution.
No, I understand.
We could use the money on the play equipment, but I quite agree.
Councillor Jones, Councillor Gurney, and then Councillor Mondo.
I just wanted to come back on Councillor Brennan's point. I actually spoke to Jack, who oversees the splash park, today about something else, and there was this weekend dogs allowed in splash parks at the end of season, and the dogs have had a thoroughly enjoyable time, shall I say. So Jack is already excited for next year, and he did mention to me that he would be looking to work to see if there's something that they could do increasing the opportunities for dogs in Bennetts. He was talking about possibly a dog show of some kind, or a dog play date and that sort of stuff. So he's got some ideas that him and Lauren are going to look at. So I think the dogs may be catered for the next few years anyway, with the excitement of being able to go in the splash park on occasions.
Yeah, I think what's emerging is a slightly better solution here, that we provide our open spaces for people to run events of that nature. And that's what you do, rather than actually trying to provide fixed equipment, dog agility facilities. I think Councillor Brent may have a good point there. Support from Councillor Jones.
Good.
Maybe that's the way forward.
Yeah, well,
to deliver this particular
project. Councillor Gurney.
Thank you, Chair. Also picking up on points that Councillor Brennan raised. I'm aware that I have on a couple of occasions contacted John and asked if the Town Rangers could do something such as near Manshead School, clearing an underpass and some steps. And John came back to me and said, well, on this occasion, we will do it, but we need really CBC to be taking on these roles, which is true. And if we're not, or if the officers aren't getting any satisfaction from their counterparts at CBC, then I think it would be helpful if we as Twin Hatters are told, so that we can chase it up. Obviously, I'm a member of the administration, but all Central Beds councillors have equal access to officers, senior officers, directors, portfolio holders. We all have equal access. It's really knowing if there are issues and being told about them. I mean, I've come here today and I've heard about these things, but it really is first time I've heard about these things. But so if I'm told beforehand, I can maybe try and get some things going on that. So obviously I want to help the town as much as I can, and we don't want the Rangers going around doing CBC work unless you're going to get the money for it. So I think there is a kind of there's a general thing at CBC is we don't want to spend any money because the budget's so tight. But we can't get away with that forever, and we shouldn't be we shouldn't be a town council saying, well, that's okay, we'll pick up the bill for that because it's going to cost us money. So that's my view on that. And I would also say that if owners of nasty dogs want to enter into this, I think they should be charged more.
Yeah, just on that one, I think the intention behind it saying that to maintain grass verge is kind of the opposite of doing what rangers do. So the intention was to have a conversation with CBC to say, we want now to mow our grass verges instead of CBC, and we'd like you to pay us something towards doing it, not expecting us to pay us more than you're paying your current competitor, and see if at some point they can extract us out. And there are parishes and villages where that already happens with parish councils, possibly not a town in this area. So it's entirely possible. But that has a deadline of March 27 on it, so we haven't yet actually done anything about it. But that is the intention, to see if we can actually take it on as part of our overall mission to make Dunstable look good and the green spaces in all their aspects across the town look good. Let them keep you posted on progress.
Thank you. Any other comments? Otherwise, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your participation. There have been some good debates tonight, and we've obviously absorbed quite a lot of information as well. So thank you all.